So those of you who know the story behind the Philco radio, I've got another one for you. So the gentleman who I got the Philco from, after his death, I got it from his estate, from his widow actually. Around that same time, she had asked me to look at a few of his other antiques and to come up with a price so she could sell them. Because she wanted to redecorate the house and kind of make it her own. One of those objects was this. This is an Edison diamond disc C250 Chippendale that he bought in 2009 for $300, as I later found out. And she wanted it kind of out of the house because it's big, it's bulky, it provides her limited enjoyment, and she wanted me to help her sell it. So I came up with a price of anywhere from $250 to $500 based on market conditions, and which at the time weren't favorable. We were in the middle of a recession, just coming out of it. So I'm like, don't get too optimistic, but it will sell to the right buyer. And she asked if I would buy it, and I said, not really looking at this time to acquire something of such, magnitude. In other words, it's too rich for my blood because, I just, it's very nice, and, I have a very small home, so, anyway. So, fast forward a couple years to about 2 months ago, and I was over at her house. She had made dinner, and I was helping her with the computer issue, and I had been helping her all along with various things, and never charged her a dime. And she asked about the Edison again, and asked, would I be interested in it? And I'm like, like I said before, it's just a little bit too rich for my blood, and I appreciate you asking me, but it's just a lot of money right now, and I got Christmas coming. I got a nephew to buy for, and so she said, "Oh no, do you want it?" I'm like, "You mean like for nothing?" And she said, "Yeah, just get it out of my house." So I said, "Well, on that note, let me make a phone call now." On that note, I said, "Yes, I will absolutely take it off your hands." I couldn't thank you enough. And anyway, we left it at that. Finally, my dad, actually, ironically, just bought himself a pickup truck. So I called him up and said, "Hey, Dad, I need you to do me a favor. Can you come over here and grab this and bring it to my house? Thanks." Yeah, anyway. So I didn't go like that. But anyway, he said, "Yeah, absolutely." So he got his truck, and we brought it up to my house. Here it is today. Anyway, so what is this? I think I mentioned this earlier in the video. This is a 1916, because I actually have the production date on it. The label's still affixed to the inside of the horn box. It is the Edison Diamond Disc C250 Chippendale model, which was one of the more common ones. And it features this, of course, this style grill. And I'm sure you guys have, if you know phonographs, you know the Edison was definitely a different animal, and it was basically one of the best phonographs you could buy, with one caveat. Now Edison, when he switched over to flat discs in about 1912, when he came out with his first flat disc phonograph, he had to sidestep a few patents to make his creation work. And one of the patents that he had to sidestep was the lateral recording method used on the Victrolas. And now Edison, on his wax cylinder phonographs, he used what was called the Hill and Dale recording method, where the needle goes up and down like this. And anyone who knows anything about records knows that the needle on a record goes like this, which is something that Victor started way back in the early 20th century, late 19th century possibly. So Edison decided that he would use his method to his advantage. And that advantage was the units that he created would sound better than anything Victor was putting out at the time. And he also went above and beyond in designing and engineering his turntables to be some of the most finely crafted pieces of machinery ever made. So let's take a look at it. Now, I don't have the original key, but I have this one. The original key is called a double dolphin key. The key head has two dolphins. Actually, my dad pointed this out because he's also a locksmith as a hobby. He does locksmithing, and he saw that this key was definitely hand cut, meaning it wasn't the original key. It was retrofitted to this unit. So I've got a little bit of a project. I got to go on eBay and find myself a double dolphin key, and hopefully it'll just work in this lock. But if not, I have my dad to modify it as necessary. Wait a second. There we go. Now, it's a sight to behold because there's a lot of gold, a lot of use of stark contrasting colors in this unit. And you've got the imposing black cast iron motor plate, and you've got the gold-plated reproducer, and the polished brass horn. I mean, this thing was meant to look nice. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this is a C250. Now, Edison at the time used the model numbers as the price, or vice versa. So the C250 cost $250 in 1915 when it was released. That's a lot of frickin' money for that time period. I think that was like several months' salary for most people. Most factory workers only made a few cents a day. So you can imagine whoever originally purchased this had to have been well off. So, now what makes the Edison Diamond Disc so amazing is that the reproducer is nothing like the Victrola reproducer. And if you've seen a Victrola or its licensed counterparts, like the Columbia Graphanola, and there's some other brands like Sonora and Gramophone, their reproducers are vertical, so that there's actually actually I have a picture of one here somewhere. So what we have here is the reproducer from the Columbia Graphanola that I used to have. And you'll notice that on the reproducer on this particular unit, you've got a needle connected to basically a hammer that pivots like this. Like that. And it vibrates again. Actually, the vibrations are transferred directly to a mica disc, which then, of course, sends the audio waves down this tube. Now, on a unit like this, you're basically at the mercy of the tightness of these joints to produce a clean sound with very little vibrations. You're also at the mercy of the mechanical connection between this iron arm and the mica disc. My particular Graphanola had a bit of a vibration, if you will, especially with high frequencies, and that was caused by the actual needle holder and this little, right where it attaches to the diaphragm. I could never get it quite right so that it wouldn't vibrate. And the other problem I had was, the joints on these things tend to wear out over time. So you can have a lot of play, or just a little bit of vibration between the joints. Think of it like a flute, where you have a foot joint that slides very precisely into the flute body. And any vibration between those two surfaces, those two pieces, can destroy the sound of a flute, or any musical instrument for that matter. So as the units started to age, they would tend to sound not so great, and they would require component replacement and other things. Now, of course, the overall design of this machine was intended to be cost effective. The Graphanola Favorite, which is what this is, only cost $50 in about 1915, ironically. about the same time period. There was one other aspect that Edison had to contend with. The Victor licensed machines used the grooves of the record to slowly move the reproducer arm towards the center. And apparently Victor had a patent on that. And the way Edison overcame that was quite interesting. So back to the Edison, I want to show you how the reproducer is put together and how it works. So it's actually attached to the horn. The entire horn moves with the reproducer arm. It's one unit. So that eliminates that potential failure point of having two precisely fitted joints together. It also means that there is an extremely high amount of drag, or there theoretically would be a lot of drag on the needle if it had to alone move the entire assembly in. There's a lot of weight here to move that in and out. So Edison had a few tricks up his sleeve. But first, let's take the reproducer out of its horn, and we'll take a look at it. So as the name implies, the Edison diamond disc used a diamond needle that was affixed to this little fulcrum here. Let me get it into some better light, actually. So the reproducer body is made of solid, I believe it's like a solid brass, and it is in fact gold-plated. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're going to get there in a minute. So the actual needle is attached to a fulcrum, which on one end is connected to a silk braided thread that goes right into the rice paper and cork reproducer diaphragm. And that appears to be in pretty good shape. Now, as it's lowered onto the record, watch what happens. I'm going to put it on my leather wallet to avoid damaging the needle. As it's lowered down, you'll notice that it actually self-tensions that thread. Probably can't see it at that angle, but you'll notice that the thread never slacks at all. No matter what happens, it keeps a perfect, just the right amount of tension on that thread. And it does that through the use of this fulcrum, which raises, when it's dropped down, the weight of this shoe here. I'm going to just call it a shoe, just for the hell of it. The weight of that shoe is what helps keep the tension on that thread. And as you see it in operation, the whole system works just perfectly. This needle cost about $150 to replace. So it's always a good idea to make sure that you do everything you can to protect it. When I transport the unit, when I transported it this time, I actually packed the reproducer assembly into a box very carefully, along with a few other odds and ends, to make sure that nothing happens to them. I'm actually going to leave the reproducer out for this next demonstration. Just carefully place it somewhere where it won't get damaged. Okay. The other thing that the Edison diamond disc offered over the Victrola was an automatic braking system. To demonstrate that, I'm going to apply the brake, and I'm going to wind it up. Right now it is completely unloaded. I always, when I had my Graphanola at least, I would keep the unit unloaded. In other words, I would let the spring wind down completely when it wasn't being used. And that's always to protect the spring and keep it from developing a memory at its height. Now you can hear the spring box bumping a little bit. That is an indication that it could potentially benefit from being rebuilt again, or torn apart, cleaned, and lubricated. But you also have to consider the fact that it hasn't been used in years. It's just been sitting. But prior to John buying this unit in 2009, it had been gone through, and someone really knew what they were doing, and they cleaned and lubricated the entire mechanism and did a very nice job. So we want to get it fully wound. I want to show you a few other things that Edison did to improve his machine and to justify the high price. Now, undoubtedly, and I have no experience with Victrolas, but I do know that Graphenolas did vary in quality based on the model you purchased. The favorite, which was a $50 model, available, I believe, from the mid-teens up until the 20s, came in it was a very basic and very Spartan machine that didn't really have a lot going for it in terms of build quality. But when you start bringing yourself up to the $250 price range, you expect nothing but the best, and Edison delivered. So how this automatic brake works is we're gonna actually release it right now. There we go. Okay. Now we're under our own power. Okay. As the horn is drawn in, as it gets closer and closer to the center of the disc, this adjustable lever will strike. Actually, this stop lever will strike that. Watch. And it stops the unit. Pretty cool. I believe maybe higher end Victrolas had this feature, but the Edison Diamond Disc model C250 also had it. There was also another brake, an electric brake, that was available on later models, I believe starting in 2017, called the Duncan brake. I know very little about the Duncan brake, but I've heard that they can be troublesome, and having the automatic mechanical brake is probably the best way to go. But in fully operational condition, the Duncan brake can add value to a phonograph. So I'm going to, for this next piece, I'm going to stop the turntable using the speed control lever, which has a stop position as well. Okay. And we're going to remove the platter. We're going to remove the record, and then the platter. The platter could stand to be recovered. In fact, I'm going to, there's actually a couple of different companies that sell pre-cut felt. I'm going to pick some of that up. Let's take a look at the platter while we're here. This platter is made from brass, which has been polished on the rim. It's a very beautiful design, very heavy too. The $50 Columbia Graphenola had a platter made of, if I recall, it was just a stamped piece of steel. So I'm going to need some additional light, and unfortunately that thing ain't bright enough. So here's the mechanism viewed from the top. We've got our two spring boxes in the back there. We've got our governor and shaft here. This actually has an automatic oiling system. You just need to keep oil in these cups. That's pretty much all there is to it. There's a cup here, and there's also one over here. There's just an oil port there. It also instructs you to oil the top bearing on the spindle. And I think that's it for lubrication. There's even instructions here to oil mechanism, turn indicator to stop, remove reproducer, remove turntable by lifting up. Another thing you want to notice is the turn speed on the rotational speed on the Diamond Disc is 80 RPM rather than 78 RPM. Why? I don't know. I'm sure Edison had his reasoning. So let's go ahead and start the unit with the platter off. Get the light where I want it. And you'll see the governor in action here. Let me just put the light right there. Now the governor works exactly like most other phonographs and steam engines, ironically. Well, not really. But the governor works by utilizing these two weights, which are attached to flexible springs and or spring steel. And as those weights are pulled outward, this flywheel rubs up against these braking blocks that are attached to the governor control lever. So as it reaches its designated speed, it starts to self-brake. And as it slows down, the weights are drawn inward, and the flywheel is pushed outward just a little bit. And it just kind of bounces ever so slightly off of those brake shoes. You'll notice all the gears in this unit are made of brass. Now, in comparison to the Columbia Grafanola, which has the governor gear, made out of a fibrous material that wears out and can cause the unit to fly out of control. The Edison didn't agree with that, so he used brass gears. It's a very high quality mechanism, which is why it's still alive 99 years later. You're going to notice a few other things. Let's see. Looks like our main drive is through that corkscrew down there. And that corkscrew mates right up with the spring cup gear, spring box gear. And then it drives, actually the governor shaft drives this worm gear back here. And that worm gear is what I wanted to talk about. That worm gear is how Edison was able to bypass one of the other patent restrictions on the Victor machines. So on a Victrola, the horn, well, not the horn, but the reproducer is moved inward by the needle following the groove. Now that's great if you've got a horizontally recorded track. The problem with the Edison is it's a vertically recorded track. And because Edison has the horn attached directly to the reproducer, oh, that was just a spring box, okay. As it's attached to the reproducer, there's a lot of weight there. And the side effect of that is it would put an extremely high amount of stress on the needle and the record itself. So Edison used a toothed rack, which is attached to the horn assembly, which I'm going to show you by removing the grill, which I just recovered today. And where's my phone? There it is. So it's attached to the horn mechanism. So you can see how that tooth, you can see, there we go. That tooth rack right there. Can I zoom in? No, I can't while I'm recording. It's best demonstrated actually by dropping the horn into position. So we're gonna do that. We're gonna drop the horn down by lifting up this lever. So now that that tooth rack is engaged, you'll be able to see it mesh. So straight ahead. This is kind of difficult. You can see is dead ahead is that worm gear, which drives that rack just above it. You can't really see the teeth because they're so small. But anyway, that is what moves the entire horn assembly inward without applying any stress to the needle, lateral stress. It's an ingenious design, and by God it works. So there you go. One of the biggest differences between the Edison and the Victrola. Now, in later years, Edison had a bit of a VHS versus Beta battle. Because the Victor patents were running out and getting less expensive to produce as licensing costs were going down, apparently, and I'm just assuming that, more and more companies were producing Victrolas, and the better musicians were recording for the Victrolas and their various similar copies. So what this meant is that Edison was starting to lose talent, and well, one of the biggest problems was that Edison was dictating the kinds of records that would be produced for his machines. And it turned out that a lot of the types of artists that he was recording on for these machines were more popular in rural areas. So, he kind of cornered himself to the rural market. And as they started to, develop diverse musical tastes, the rural market was moving towards the Victor machines. So it was kind of like a Sony Betamax issue, because he also had tight licensing and restrictions on his patents as well. So, it kind of was, kind of put himself out of business there. And by the time, Edison got wise to the fact that he needed to get with the times, it was too little too late. But one of the other features I love about this machine is the volume control and the fact that it still works. Now, if you've ever seen, worked on, or heard a Grafanola or a Victrola, you'll know that the sound was regulated through baffles or doors. I'm sorry, louvers or doors. I know that Victor had the patent on the doors, which is why Columbia went with louvers. But Edison did something completely different. His actual volume control was developed similar to a trumpet mute. And, it's the coolest thing. So this lever right here is what controls the volume. And what it does is it draws this cotton wrapped ball in and out of the horn. And that is how volume is regulated on this machine. Does it work? Absolutely. It works quite well. And the fact that this is the original ball is even cooler. It just is. But I had to lubricate this cable because it was very stiff. And I can't wait to demonstrate it. So here's the proof of manufacturing date. It actually says it right here. Edison No. 2 Cabinet Factory, March of 1916. So in just a few months, it's going to be 100 years old. And this thing runs really well, too. I have no plans right now of tearing the mechanism apart. All I did was apply some non-detergent oil to it, just to keep it going smoothly. And that's pretty much it. The other thing I did is, as I mentioned earlier, I recovered the grill, and I'm going to make a video on how I did this. And it came out pretty well and was done really quickly. So the original grill cloth would have been like probably an olive silk. And it just so happened I don't like olive silk, nor do I like, what was that? Oh, that was the spring. Spring box is making some noise. Or, I see what happened. I must have drifted this over and it hit the brake. And now it's stuck for some reason. What happened there? I see what happened. Okay. I had it over too far, and with the unit running, it locked it down. Is it? There we go. So now it should be, now it's in the toothed rack. By the way, if you need to lock one of these in position for transportation, it has to go all the way over, and then you drop this down, and that locks it in place. So getting back to the grill cloth, when I got it, it had a brown silk grill cloth. It was not original. Someone had added it very recently, and I just didn't like the way it looked. It was too shiny. It didn't allow the shape of the grill to really pop, and I wanted something more in a maroon or red color. Now I chose a cloth for a couple of reasons, most of them cost related. But I don't like the shiny appearance. I don't like it. I just don't like it. So I went with a cloth. It had enough shear to it to where I think it'll pass sound quite well. And besides, this unit is incredibly loud, so anything I can do to naturally dampen the noise or sound it makes, to me, is a benefit. together again, and we'll go ahead and play something. I'm going to make sure that that brake is disengaged. Okay, we got that on. I'm going to start it up. Good. Now let's get the reproducer reinstalled. You're probably wondering about that light bulb, and I'm going to explain that in just a moment. So, what do I have for records? Well, the one I actually had originally on here is, one side is Irene, the other side is Alice Blue Gown from the musical comedy Irene. This is actually from about 1919, and from what I could tell. But I haven't shown you the most interesting feature of all, the cabinet storage. Okay, so let's take a look at what's in here. Now, the earlier 1915 to 1920 C250 featured a storage cabinet with 2 drawers for storing records. In later years, after about 1920, they went to a slotted indexing type storage system. And the drawers, I think, are cooler. But this is what it looks like. And these are the records. One more important thing I wanted to mention, and I forgot to mention this in a previous take of this video as well, but you're probably wondering why the discs are so damn thick. Well, the thickness of the disc is to combat the propensity of warping that the Victrola discs were known for. Because Edison required the disc to be absolutely flat, he had some of his chemical engineers put their heads together to come up with a material that would be less prone to warping, and it also had to have properties that would also reduce warping. So they came up with a very thick record that was basically laminated wood fibers. The core is made of it's like almost like a wood-based filler. I think it's more like particle board, if you ask me. But anyway, and the actual recording surface is made from lacquer or something like it. So that's what that's all about. So you got that all going for you. And anyway, so that's why they're so thick. It also means you can't really play these on Victrolas, and not because of the thickness, but because of the way the needle is cut into the record, or the way the groove is cut into the record. So as I was mentioning earlier in the video, and I'm jumping around here, and I apologize for that. One of the fringe benefits of Edison's recording method is that you can fit more tracks per inch than you would if you were to laterally record. So you can fit about 5 minutes worth of music on one side rather than 2.5 minutes, which was common on the Victrolas of the time period. Now this record is called My Old Kentucky Home, and we're going to play that in just a moment. And you can see, actually, let me get some light going here. You can actually see what the original finish would have looked like when it was new. The unit itself still has all the original finish to it, and that's what gives it its very antiquated, crazed, or alligatored finish, which is more prevalent on the grill than anything else. I intend to keep it that way. I have no plans whatsoever of refinishing this machine. I just think that would be a crime, and I won't commit it. So there you go. So what we've got to do now is we've got to wind it up all the way. I haven't played this record, so I don't know how it sounds. But These records are very dirty. They need to be cleaned, and there is a special way of cleaning these old diamond discs without ruining them. I just need to figure out what that method is. But it's well documented. So whenever we start a record, we want to start it on a full wind, and I want to really work this machine in so that way it, wakes up. Now, while we're cranking away, I want to talk about this light. I'm actually looking for more information on it because I want to know if that was a legitimate dealer option. I know that there are many light kits that were available for the Victrolas, but this one is special. I think someone actually added it themselves. Like went out and bought the switch and bought the lamp socket. But there it is. Now the bulb is not original. I added that bulb. I actually bought it today. This is a 4-watt nightlight bulb, and it fits right into the ceramic socket. Look at that shadow that it's casting. And then right behind that is a push-pull type power switch. Originally, the power cord was run through the back of the unit. It came out right here, and that is how the lamp was powered. I took the this top cover off. This is just held in by 2 screws, and I looked at the wiring, and I looked at the socket and the switch, and I've determined that it is actually potentially was added right around the time this unit was built, but it was not factory. But something like this would have been common on a unit that was placed in a home with electricity. Because the Edison diamond disc was so damn expensive, it's not really a leap to say that the home it was placed in was one of the earliest American homes with electric wiring already installed. I think that's actually very plausible, as a matter of fact. So that's what that's all about. I'd like to know more information on it and find out how many other diamond discs, specifically this model, that have been fitted with an aftermarket light kit. Now, if I wanted to remove the light kit permanently, not that I will, because I actually think it gives it character, but if I wanted it gone, I would have to replace this entire top cover. Or this, it's actually more of like a bezel, which again, I'm not going to do. I think it adds to the unit's history and character. Being it a period correct wiring job, with period correct fixtures and switches and everything, I think it's great that it's there. So to start the record on a diamond disc, it's a little different from a Victrola, but you want to make sure that we raise up the horn and reproducer. We want to start the unit. Normally you'd be starting it from the braked position. We're going to let it spin up. Then we're going to drag the horn and line it up. This is why that light is so important, which is why I think it was added right around the time it was purchased. And we're going to just use this little pin here as a guide to get it just right. I just wanted to check to see if my neighbors were home. I want to run this full blast for once and see how it goes. So let's start it back up again. Here we go. pretty good. Reduced volume. You'll notice a lot of dust that just appeared on this record. That's all what was ground out of the grooves. Now these records, like I said, are very old and very dirty. I'm sure that's wonderful for the needle, but it is what it is. The only way to really clean these grooves out is, I guess, to play them. I'm going to have to look into that. There's got to be a better way to do that. So let's try another record. What's on the other side of this one? Let's see. Come Where the Lilies Bloom. Mixed voices with orchestra, metropolitan quartet. Okay, let's see how that goes. We're gonna have to wind it back up again, and then we'll get her going. Again, always start from a full wind. Nothing's worse than the record starting to slow down and the unit run out of spring power just as you're about to play. But yeah, these spring boxes probably should be taken apart and cleaned, lubricated again, if not replaced. But anyway, here we go. We're going to start it up. So I've got my brake adjusted a little off. I think I'm going to nudge it over just a bit more. There we go. because it's stopping a little late, I think. But let's see. Here we go. Get that needle just right. Right there is good. Check this out. This disc is off center. So the way the unit's designed, it gives the needle a little bit of room to move around without striking or throwing anything off alignment. But all of the work in moving that mechanism in is carried by that rack and worm gear. And you can see all the aftermath. Interesting. Yeah. So there's a lot of dirt packed into these friggin' things. But if I have to have the needle replaced, I got to figure that out. So what I'm going to do is probably bring the reproducer to work. I have a nice bench microscope I can play with and inspect it really well. The needle is easy to inspect. You just want to look at it. I mean, even a jeweler's loop would be fine. You just want to make sure that the tip of that needle is it comes to a point, and if there's any chipping involved, it needs to be replaced. There are places that will do that. Again, it's not cheap, but it can be done. But in the name of preserving something like this, I would absolutely pay to have it done if it's needed. But that's where I'm at with it. So things to do, other than inspecting the needle to make sure it's not grinding my records down. But it actually sounds pretty crisp and clear, so I don't suspect the needle to be bad. I really don't. I know what a bad needle sounds like, and there's a lot of scraping. You can hear it like, I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that the records are so damn dirty. But these units were known to sound superior to the Victors. And one of the most famous advertising campaigns related to the Edison products is that they would actually bring Edison diamond disc phonograph players, or phonographs, and live musicians all across the country, and they would actually do a comparison between the live musicians and the Edison diamond disc unit. And they would do it with the lights down and the curtains closed, and generally the audience couldn't tell the difference between the diamond disc and the actual live performer. So the sound quality was better than anything available at the time. So anyway, that's it for now. Stay tuned for more. And I'm going to be working on this. I got to find a key. I've got to get some green felt bumpers. I had to go online and try to find those. I couldn't find anything locally, so I've got to go looking. Until then, stay tuned for more stuff, and hopefully I'll do more computer videos soon. I know some of you guys are salivating at those, so we'll look at what can be done. Oh, yeah. I just added a little bit of Vaseline to this lever, and it moves much better now. Look at that. Very little effort. So much better.